Yo, 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 visualize shark takes, hit the wave grinding. In the chat, gun shark odds make it rhyming. Sunday vibes, smooth bets, no confining. Hats engaged, can't stop us from shining. Bet on the spread, liking it, keep it tight. Push the odds further, jack on the hindsight. Odds fellows mind grasping the right sight. Hats, caps on heads, winners in plain sight. Hit the light, get in the chat, feel the flow, cash it, every dollar see the bank roll. Sunday grinding picks, now you gotta know. Extra points on the screen, sharp minds always glow. Big parlays, predictions we home. Standing tall, betting knowledge all.
On a suddenly not so casual 7-point Sunday, it is NFL Week 1, the extra points, the big show. Right here on Sharky Waters Nation, the Shark and the Gun. It's been a long summer. I remember the Super Bowl. We've been to hell and back, and great times await. The biggest slate of the season we're looking at so far. Week 1, Guns picks. I am hyped. Get in the chat, everybody. Let's go. Guns, what's going on, brother?
Man, we finally made it. The wait is over. We've been waiting for this day since February after the Super Bowl with Kansas City winning the Super Bowl, but we have a full Week 1 slate. Everybody has the same record, well, except for the guys that played earlier on Thursday and Friday, but I digress. This is going to be an electric slate. Sundays are back, boys. Crisp air, pumpkin spice lattes, and NFL football. Let's go.
Speaking of crispy air, our first play not in crispy air, coming down to Florida. An in-state rivalry, two young quarterbacks, both coming off of huge contract signings. The first official of the first Sunday extra point show. Going to the Gun, the road team, plus 3.5 at official.
Yeah, you look at these two teams. You have a Jacksonville team I think is a little bit undervalued in the market. And we're going to see this team progress as the season goes along. But they're coming off a 9-8 season, 0-point differential, and minus 56 net yard average on the season. When you look at Miami, they're coming off a playoff season, 11-6, plus 5-point differential, plus 70 net yard average in 2023, and they had a plus 15-point differential at home. But when we look at those home games, and I want to emphasize this, they were 6-2 ATS as a home favorite, but look at the teams they played. These are the bottom feeder, all bottom feeders in 2023 at home. Denver, the Giants, Carolina, the Patriots, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the New York Jets, to name a few. Those are the ones they covered against. But when they had to play a playoff caliber team at home, it was a whole entire different element. Step up in class for them was a struggle. 1-5 straight up versus playoff caliber teams last season. And then you've got to look at Jacksonville. They actually performed well on the road. They had a plus 3-point differential, plus 22 net yard average in 2023. And that was a team that kind of plummeted at the end of the season due to a lot of injuries. Trevor Lawrence was not at his healthiest in that game. So Miami can take advantage, typically took advantage of teams, took advantage of road teams that weren't acclimated to the Florida environment. But guess what? Jacksonville, last time I checked, plays in Florida. So this team is going to work well. You talk about the sun hitting the bench on the away side. Those guys are used to that environment being in state. And then you just look at the changes that this Jacksonville team made. They revamped their wide receiver core. They got Gabe Davis from Buffalo. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. to help that offense out. And they got their line a little bit better as well to kind of help. Their run game was one of their weak points last season. I think that's going to improve in this spot. I'm just high on Jacksonville when it comes to the season. I think this is a playoff team. I do have futures tied into them to I didn't say win the division per se. I just think this is a playoff caliber team, and they're going against a Miami team that to me is a little bit overvalued in the market. So I'm going to be taking Jacksonville here, plus 3.5 as my play.
My first play of the first Sunday of the season, the buy hat is engaged. We're going to MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New York City. Turn the hell up for Big Blue. Taking the Giants at a pickup. You can get plus 1.5 now. Let's talk about it. Giants last year finished 6-11 on the campaign. But if you really start to go through their home efficiency, when I was capping this, I was actually very surprised to see this. 6-11 straight up overall, 6-2 at home, 6-0 ATS at home last 6. And those people in New York City traveling across through the Lincoln Tunnel over to East Rutherford. Turn the hell up for this team. Big. New York energy is bigger than any on the planet. I'll stand by that as a person who was born in Manhattan. But if you really look at what happened last year, a couple things really stood out. Daniel Jones, season-ending injury. Brian Dable, I talked about this on X over the summer, lost about 30 or 40 pounds, and people said, Shark, what does that have to do with being a good football coach? Last year, he looked very irritable on the sideline, real snappy with his players, and I would assume so in the locker room, just not a good vibe. You lose weight as an adult. You feel better about yourself. You treat people better. I think the energy in the room will be a lot better this year. And of course, now you get Malik Neighbors and Brian Burns in the offseason, detailed in the Hard Knocks offseason show. But let's talk about Minnesota. We talked about this last year when we faded Minnesota on a consistent basis week to week and also in the futures market. The previous year in 2022 with Kirk Cousins, Minnesota did go 13-4 with 11 one-possession wins, and then did regress downward last year, going 7-10. Now you remove Kirk Cousins. We were expecting to get J.J. McCarthy in here, but it's not. He's injured for the year. You get Sam Darnold, and you get Sam Darnold returning to MetLife, where he opened his career with the Jets, and truthfully did not have much success in this market at all. And I think traveling back to New York today could exercise some potentially bad vibes for Sam Darnold, obviously a California product originally. And matchup specific here, we have to go back 2 seasons to the last time these teams played. It was a playoff game in January of 2023. I do recall the Gun did take the Giants to beat the Vikings on the road that day, and they did. 31-24, dominated the game. This is a very similar Giants team schematically, and this is also a very similar Vikings team schematically. I think the Giants get it done today. Upward movement commenced for a team that really bottomed out last year, but did remain effective in their home stadium. Buy it at 1 o'clock, New York Giants, pick 'em 1 unit. Staying at 1 o'clock, going to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Speaking of Kirk Cousins, his first game with the Falcons, the Gun taking the home team at -3.5.
Yeah, I like Atlanta overall in the season, and I think this is going to be a good sample size to see how they're going to progress. But when you look at where these two teams came from, you have Pittsburgh coming off a playoff season remarkably with how that roster was 10-7 on the year, losing in the playoffs versus Buffalo. And then you have an Atlanta team coming off a 7-10 season. In that process, getting rid of Arthur Smith and getting a new head coach, Raheem Morris, coming over from Tampa, and you saw what he did with that defense over there. Actually, he came from the Rams. I apologize for that one, but he does have that that dynamic, or actually that coaching history with the Tampa Bay Bucks. But he brings a lot of that coaching staff over with him from the LA Rams. So this is almost like having the coaching staff that was under his regime when he was running the defense over there. Atlanta's defense made big changes overall. And one of those key changes that they made is they got Judon in a trade, taking him away from the Patriots and bringing him over there to go run that defense. You're going to see that pass rush improve drastically, and they needed help on that defensive front. And I think we're going to see that element in this game. And then you have an offense that's just loaded with talent. You got Kirk Cousins that's over there as the starting quarterback. Look at the weapons they got. They got the college football all-stars over there. We're talking Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts. Those are his weapons this season. I think this is going to be a great offense, and Kirk Cousins is going to have that acclimate that he had when he was the Minnesota Vikings QB over there. On the Pittsburgh side of the ball, they don't even know who the quarterback is on this one. I think Russell Wilson is hurt on this one, so it looks like they'll be going with Justin Fields today. And just in that dynamic, when you have two quarterbacks, you really have none. I'm not really high on Pittsburgh altogether this season, especially when you look at the history when they play early in the season. The first 4 games in 2023, they had a -140 net yard average in those games, and they were 2-2 in that remarkably. And the reason they were 2-2 is because they won the turnover battle. They were +2 and +3 in turnover ratio in those games that they won. And then you go into 2022 and you look at the same element. 1-3 with a -104 net yard average in the first 4 games of the season. And the one game that they won, they had a +5 turnover ratio in. So they only excel in these moments. It's not because they can get the yardage. It's because they win the turnover battle. So if you're able to manage and not give up the rock to the Steelers, you can really beat this team. So I'm going to be high on Atlanta here today. I think there's a reason why they're a -4 favorite, and that number's still moving up. I got it at -3.5, and that's going to be my play on this one. So give me Atlanta here in the opener at home, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, -3.5 as the play.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And I think it's a fairly noteworthy line when you see Atlanta finishing 7-10 last year, now laying over a field goal to Pittsburgh, who did finish 10-7 last year. So just from a record standpoint, if we were expecting recency bias to be going to be prevalent in this game, you would expect Pittsburgh to be right around maybe a pick 'em to -1 on the road. But as you mentioned, this really is where it's not only just having two quarterbacks on the roster right now, this is just zero continuity at the quarterback position for Pittsburgh dating back to last year. Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and now you get Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. You know, it's crazy to say, but Wilson and Fields are cast-offs at this point. And this is an ex-Super Bowl winning quarterback. You saw how he played in Denver. He did not look very impressive at all. And Justin Fields just never really came to fruition in Chicago, despite his elite athleticism. So I think I actually prefer Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson's best years are behind him. I don't think there's much of a bounce back coming, as much as the media might want to speculate on it and prop this guy up, particularly under Mike Tomlin, who's obviously a legendary players coach in Pittsburgh. But I think Justin Fields is a better prospect. I think he never really got a fair shot in Chicago. They had poor personnel around him. Eberflus never really seemed to be committed to him in any context. I think it's a fresh start for him. I'm happy for him. I've been a fan of his dating back to Ohio State. But I do think, nonetheless, this quarterback carousel and the lack of continuity is incredibly problematic. And if there's going to be some fluidity for Pittsburgh, it probably won't come, in my opinion, until after week 7 or 8. So the gun on Atlanta -4 and all the points connecting with that. Let's talk about some of these other 1 o'clock games. We have more officials at 4 o'clock. This is, of course, the Extra Points, where we give you the most information we are capable of. And there are a lot of games at 1 o'clock today that I found to be very difficult to handicap. And I know it's an early morning here, 10:17 a.m. Eastern, 7 o'clock on the West Coast, 5 a.m. in Hawaii, as if that matters to anybody. But for our Hawaiian viewers, if you're up at 5 a.m., we appreciate you checking in with us. Let's talk some 1 o'clock football. Guns has the Patriots jersey on, and the Patriots open up a brand new generation today. Gerard Mayo, Drake May at the Bengals. And I think this is one of, if not the highest played survivor picks this week. People taking the Bengals to beat the Patriots. Of course, survivor is just to win the game. We don't necessarily think the Bengals are going to lose this game, but I'll throw it to the gun for some opening comments. We were talking about this before the show. This honestly is maybe more of a trap game for the Bengals than people think. Guns, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they're over a touchdown favorite here at home versus the Patriots. And I think, and nobody's really high on the Patriots this year. And I understand why. There's the new coaching change. No Bill Belichick on this one. They're going to have to go with the new head coaching regime over there. So we don't really know, and I think even the books don't really know how that dynamic's going to work there, and especially in the quarterback position. They're going with a vet. They're not going with Drake May on this one to start out this game. So we'll see how long that lasts. So from an offensive standpoint, I'm not seeing any sort of progression into the right direction. I do like the wide receivers they picked up in the draft. I'm interested to see how those guys react in game 1 of the season. I think the defense will be on point, regardless of losing Judon for the year. They're going to be one of those teams that I think over the course we're going to have to take them in a lot of under situations on the sheer point that defense will hold up, not give up points, and they're going to go against a lot of good teams, but their offense is going to be the learning curve and trying to figure out some sort of a progression and production to help out that defense, at least keep them off the field for a little bit on this one. But that's 7.5 to me. I think God and everybody publicly is going to be hammering the Bengals, and you're seeing the line go in a different direction. I think this is probably more of a Patriots play to me. I haven't played it officially because I just want to see a little bit more data with the new offense and new coaching regime there. But if I had to go one direction on this one, I'd probably lean towards the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gross game to bet. It's a disgusting underdog to take, particularly with how poor Jacoby Brissett did appear in the preseason. And you guys know, one of the most interesting quotes I think I've heard in the last 15 years is in the draft coming out of NC State, Bill Parcells said Jacoby Brissett was the best prospect he had ever seen. I don't know if Bill was having a nice cigar and some beers that day, but Jacoby Brissett was never the most elite prospect coming out of the college draft.
He's a defensive coach. What does he know about quarterbacks? I mean, come on.
But Jacoby Brissett is the ultimate journeyman at this point, having moved from team to team, always representative to a degree. Did play for the Patriots going back, I believe, about 7 or 8 years ago. I think he was in there during the Deflategate month 1 suspension for Tom Brady, or one of those years. I believe he was in that year. But he's obviously always been representative, but he did not look good in the preseason this year at all. He looked terrible, actually. And I think that's a tough read, but I do not like this spot for Cincinnati at all. Cincinnati is a notoriously slow starting team with Joe Burrow. And I think it's psychology. They call him, Joe Big Time, Joe whatever. He's playing for the Super Bowl, even though he's never won one. And he certainly is not turned up in any of these previous seasons. Last year, they were 5-5 through 10 games. The previous year, I think they were right around 500 through week 8 as well. And this is an inherent look-ahead game. They play at Kansas City next week, 4:25 p.m. at Arrowhead. That's probably the biggest out-of-division game they play all year. And this will be a look-ahead spot. And last year in early weeks, Cincinnati took some ugly losses that I think people were really surprised by because the media is all over Joe Burrow. People really want to buy this guy. But we'll continue to remind you, don't really fall in love with this guy until the second half of the season. So I think there's a reason why you're seeing reverse line movement here. I mean, who the hell is betting the Patriots with this new group? It's obviously some sort of syndicate that has quite a bit of money that believes pretty much everything we're telling you is going to come to fruition today. I could see Cincinnati winning this game by somewhere under 7 points because despite all the moving parts, Gerard Mayo is an ex-linebacker for the Patriots. He's a Belichick ex-player. He's a hard-on type of guy. He has a lot of ex-players on his staff. It reminds me of what Dan Campbell did with the Lions. A lot of ex-NFL players on his staff, and I think they're going to be well coached. And I think that a lot of the conversational points I've heard coming out of Patriots camps and people up in that area are saying this group might not go to the playoffs, obviously, but they like the coach. The staff is incredibly professional, ex-athletes, and they're going to compete hard. So this is probably a scrappy underdog look, if anything. Don't take the Bengals, guys. It's a Joe Public garbage, nonsensical take. Staying at 1 o'clock here, I think this is a very interesting game. Titans at the Bears. That is 12 o'clock kickoff at Soldier Field here. Caleb Williams making his professional debut against Will Levis and the Titans. Guns, I don't know if you watch Hard Knocks. I do watch Hard Knocks. I thought it was entertaining. I didn't think I learned anything that I didn't already know about Caleb Williams. He's a great player. He can throw. He can run. He's got the mental makeup potentially of a guy older than his actual age. His confidence seems to be I don't know. He has universal confidence. He said he never gets nervous before a game. I don't know. What do you think about this one?
I'm not even sure he's going to be the best rookie on that roster. You forget Rome Odunze is over there too, the wide receiver, and he's going to be a key weapon for him. If there's going to be success with Caleb Williams on this one, it's going to be because he's got a dynamic there with Rome. But yeah, they like with the Bears, they've done everything right. They've improved their roster via the draft. They went and got free agents here and there to complement there. They got Keenan Allen is one of the wide receivers there for them now. So got that veteran element to kind of help that young wide receiver core. That's going to be an interesting dynamic there to see if that actually helps them out. And you can see it in their win total. I think their win total was 8.5, which is well beyond what they did last season, obviously. So even the books are high on them over the course of the year. But you got to understand, this is game one. with the Bears. Okay, you're dealing with a rookie quarterback. Typically, with rookie quarterbacks, they're not backable from a betting environment. I think that I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's not a profitable element to go and take the bet on the rookie quarterback in week one. I think we just need to see a little bit of this Bears defense. Bears defense and their offense, because I think they're on Hard Knocks. Everybody's got them on their mind. They're a little bit overinflated value currently, especially in week one. And they're going against a Titans team that basically said, okay, Will Levis, you're our guy. I'm going to beef up that offensive line. I got to get rid of Derrick Henry because I can't pay him anymore. It's your show. You're either going to be the guy or we're going to have to go in a different direction next year. I think he just putting a lot of pressure on him that I'm not entirely believing that he is the guy and he is able to handle that pressure. And granted, on this one, I have no play on this one because I think the Bears are going to be relatively good, and they're playing a Titans team that I think is going to be one of the worst teams in the AFC, to be honest with you, especially losing their defensive coordinator to the Giants. So they got a whole another dynamic on that side of the ball. I'm not going to play this one, honestly. I just want to wait and see and just watch both of these teams. But good luck to Caleb Williams.
Yeah, this is honestly a no play for me to the max. I think there's just so many moving parts in this game, and I think that's ultimately a huge conversational point across a lot of these games. A lot of young players, rookie quarterbacks starting. This is I hadn't thought of this until just this present moment, but we have how many rookie quarterbacks starting today? Three,
I think. Yeah,
that's got to be That's got to be up there all time in terms of how many rookies are starting in one week one.
I think I saw an article that like this hasn't happened since like 1983. I could be wrong though. Like I was trying to figure that out myself this morning, but yeah, this is a lot of rookie quarterbacks for week one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody expected Bo Nix to get the starting nod, but of course, Caleb Williams, number one overall pick. But I think the Titans have equally as much moving parts. I don't think anybody really knows how good Will Levis is. Last year, he showed some efficiency, mostly at home. I remember he had an incredible backdoor win on a primetime game at Miami, but they were getting hammered for 55 minutes of that game. Obviously, this kid, not a super high draft pick. I don't know if he's necessarily the guy. Now you get a new head coach, Brian Callahan. Not Brian Callahan, who I believe was a head coach with the Raiders at one point in time, going back about 20 years. But this is a younger guy who was the offensive coordinator for Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. And, it's an interesting point as we're flowing through this. But Cincinnati also missing their offensive coordinator from last year today. So that could be another fade point for them. But, this is just classic NFL football. Defensive team with Tannehill and Vrabel. They go the polar opposite. They're going to throw the ball a lot more. They have an offensive-minded guy in there. They're probably not going to play a lot of defense. I could see this going over today. And I think if you just look at the number at 44.5, that's a really high number for a Titans game if we're going back over the previous generation of head coach and quarterback. So I think you're going to see a different type of football game here. And I think the Bears are going to be playing a real high-flying style of offense with Caleb Williams, as Guns mentioned. A lot of really marquee players on that offense now. Also acquired DeAndre Swift for the running game. And, of course, Odunze in the draft and Keenan Allen from the Chargers. So I think the over in this game is probably the best look. One thing that I did find when I was looking at this, which I was a little surprised to find, the Bears are actually 5-0 ATS last 5 games at home. And that was obviously without Caleb Williams. So the line is probably a Bears line. I think the over is probably the best play in this game.
So one more thing. Yeah, actually, it kind of jogged my memory. Football Guy 97 said it. He goes, so Bill Callahan is actually, and I had this in my notes too on the preview shows, but Bill Callahan is actually on the staff for the Tennessee Titans with Brian Callahan. His son is the head coach. So he's going to be running the offensive line. And actually, that's a kind of a good move on his part because you look at Bill Callahan's offensive lines, like he's improved them in year one. So if there's any positive thing about the Tennessee Titans is probably their offensive line is going to be a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah, great point, which of course allows Levis to be able to deliver the football in the pocket. I do think psychologically, I don't like that move though. If I'm the head coach of a team, I don't want my dad to be on my staff. I just think it's a massive energy clash with it just doesn't match. It just doesn't match up. Like this son needs to be the top guy in the room, and just inherently, you have your dad on the staff. it's going to just create a funky psychological environment. So I think as we talk through this game, probably Bears and the over would be the sides in this game. Next one at 1 o'clock, another divisional game here, or actually the first divisional game, excuse me. Texans at Colts. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the sharper lines in the 1 o'clock slate. Guns, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is a divisional rivalry, so I guess on this one you have a lot of data when it comes to like this matchup. So, I was trying to look up some of the data when these two teams do meet up. And if you look at the data, it looks like it's mostly fading the home team on this one. I think the home team is 1-4 straight up in the last 5 meetings between these two teams. Actually, probably, a little bit more than that. But at any rate, I think this is probably one of those situations. If you want to follow the trends, you just fade the home team every time these two teams meet up. It's going to be a little bit different dynamic there with the Colts. Getting Anthony Richardson back, out for the season. They had to they went with the backup there. Escapes my memory now, but they were productive with the backup there. But I think Anthony Richardson, what I saw from that sample size, especially early in the season, he looked like he was that guy. However, he doesn't have that ability to understand that he has to save his body and not take hits or run so much, because linebackers are going to feast on that and try to take you out automatically. He's got to preserve himself as the quarterback of that team. So it's going to be interesting to see. Also with that line too, this is probably it's called the last dance for this offensive line. They've been together forever. A lot of those guys are on the last year of their contract, and they're not going to be able to afford all those guys. And they're just aging veterans at this point. Most of them are in, age 30 and up. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this team. And of course, everybody's high on the Texans after what we saw last season with them. So for me, I'm just staying away with this one. I'm just going to watch, because, if the Texans are really that good, let's see what CJ Stroud does in year 2.
No, I agree. I think that Anthony Richardson is a big question mark here. Obviously, Houston last year far superseding expectations going to the playoffs with CJ Stroud. They were projected to be significantly under 500 last year, and to go to the playoffs was just incredibly impressive. I do think when you look at this line, it's a push line. I do expect this to be right around 3 points on the Houston side. I know a lot of sharp guys love the Colts just throughout this season. I think they're incredibly well coached. I think Shane Steichen is one of the more underrated coaches in the league already. Obviously, Indianapolis, not a gigantic market. When you turn on TV, you don't find a lot of the commentators just diving into the Colts as their first conversational point. But I think Shane Steichen is a top 10 coach in the league. I think he's got a great mentality. I think he was significantly important to the Philadelphia Super Bowl run going back 2 years. And I think what you saw happen last year with Philadelphia was largely in part to losing Steichen and, of course, their other coordinator who's now coaching the Arizona Cardinals. But I also do think the best look in this game is probably the over at 48.5. If you look at the last time these teams played, it was to close the season, actually. Houston played their last regular season game last year, week 18 at Indianapolis, did win the game 23-19. Now you see the line at 48.5. And obviously you're going to get Anthony Richardson, who's a very explosive offensive player. I think this game probably projects to be somewhere in the low 50s when all is said and done at 4 o'clock Eastern here today. So I think this is a tight game. It's going to be a divisional game. It's going to be a great game to watch. Probably one you want to avoid betting either side ATS, but the over is probably the best look in this game. Say 1 o'clock, Orchard Park, New York. Our guy Adam Smith is talking Buffalo Bills, and we will dive into that game. I love my guy Josh Allen. You guys know I've loved this guy since his rookie year. I think he's an incredible athlete. But the Bills, did they peak and just never win? Because it seems like they might have peaked 2 years ago when they were right there 2 or 3 years ago in Kansas City, almost taking down Patrick Mahomes. But last year, 6-6 straight up through 12 games, a couple really lackluster midseason losses. And then they found their urgency, switched coordinators, went to more run-heavy game, and did finish the season 5-0 before fizzling out in the playoffs to Kansas City at home in the second round. But the question here is Sean McDermott past his window with this group? as I mentioned, a couple years ago, it looked like Buffalo was potentially going to compete with Kansas City sustainably to be the class of the AFC. They have fallen down a notch since. And oftentimes, when you peak as a coach and then you fall down, you don't really re-peak again. You had your shelf life. The energy is now sort of flat. And I think that's part of the reason why this line is short. Buffalo laying 6.5 points to Arizona. If you just look at this game really just blanketly, I think Buffalo should be laying 10 points here. And I think the fact that they're laying under a touchdown is the sports books telling us what I just said, that this team is maybe not as good as people think. And as I just mentioned, the Philadelphia coordinators from 2 years ago, well, look no further than Arizona, Jonathan Gannon out there creating a great mentality with this group. Now you get Kyler Murray back, I believe. And Kyler Murray's been a great road quarterback throughout the entire duration of his career. We're not entirely sure why, but he's a much better road ATS quarterback than he is in the desert. So I'll throw it to the gun. I think my initial look in this game would be something on the Cardinals. I see this game being pretty tight.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think the Cardinals are probably going to keep this one close. I just look at this Buffalo team. There's a lot of changes. We're talking about a 4-13 team with the Arizona Cardinals versus an 11-6 team in 2023 with Buffalo. A lot of key guys missing off that team. They've already kind of shown their cards a little bit as far as what they want to do. They're trying to reset this entire offense, get rid of Gabe Davis, letting Stephon Diggs go. So the wide receiver core, they just basically said, we're just going to get it. We're going to go draft a rookie, and we're just going to kind of work with the wide receivers that we have or what we can get. And I think with the new OC in this one, he's more run oriented. So we're going to see this team be a lot more aggressive as far as run plays than they are pass plays, taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hand instead of ripping the ball down the field. So you're going to see a lot of carries from James Cook. I think overall during the season, and I want to just see how that offense reacts in week one, but I'm getting a feeling that James Cook is going to be the staple or the figurehead in that offense, and he's going to get a lot of touches. And I think we can take advantage of that in the prop market eventually, but let's just watch what happens in week one. Then you have on the defensive side of the ball, they got rid of some of the key guys, part of that defense, Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, got rid of edge rusher Leonard Floyd that led the team in sacks last season. So they've already reset the defense too. And then you look at Arizona. Arizona has got no way to go but up, right? That is second year in that Petsing offense with Kyler Murray. And I know Kyler Murray is considered lazy. He doesn't like watch game film and spends too much time playing Call of Duty or whatever games that he plays. But I think he's going to get smartened up this year in year two, and I think that offense is going to be a lot better, especially with that new weapon that he has in Marvin Harrison Jr. That dynamic that he's going to have that's been missing since DeAndre Hopkins left that team. But the defense, to me, has a lot of question marks on this one. They did improve the defensive front, but I still have some concerns with that. With the Cardinals, I'll just say this. The best thing about the Cardinals last season is you take them when they're playing a non-divisional opponent, but when they play a divisional opponent, you fade them. They're 1-5 ATS 2 seasons in a row versus their own divisional opponents. So I think those opportunities, we're going to be talking about this team a little bit more. But in this spot, I think there's no other play to take on this one than taking Arizona on the points, because I really don't trust Buffalo all season long.
No, I agree. And I think if you can get a +7, I think there's a few sevens out there now. Not to say you're ever free rolling a bet in the NFL, but I think 7 being a key number there. If you get 7, it's probably the correct side in this game. Staying at 1 o'clock, last 1 o'clock game, another divisional game, Saints Panthers. This game, in my opinion, is really a battle of mediocrity. Neither of these teams, in my opinion, are well coached. And the funny thing is, you guys would say, well, you know what? Carolina's got a brand new head coach. And I'll say this, I don't like the hire. I don't think the guy really has a big enough hard-on leatherhead mentality to be a professional football coach. And obviously, head coach, I should say. I just don't like Canales as the head coach in Carolina. And I do not like Dennis Allen with the Saints at all. And, I mean, this is the second stint as a head coach for Dennis Allen. He's been mediocre in both. I think that last year was a perfect example of the Saints just purely being just that, mediocre, 9-8. Had trouble covering games in the first 7 or 8 weeks. I believe we had bet them a few times early season. I remember they were 1-5 ATS, a couple coin flip losses, push on the road at Carolina last year, Monday Night Football week 2, 20-17. And I think that's kind of the environment we're getting back into here. The last time these teams played, it was late season in New Orleans. New Orleans did blow them out 28-6. But again, looking at this line at -3.5, 4, it does bring you back to the first matchup, which was a 3-point game. I think this is probably a push line. I think you're probably getting slight value on the dog here. I think Bryce Young has to improve. I think maybe a coaching change will improve small window just because of the change, a new voice in the room, even though I think long-term it's probably not the solution. And truthfully, I think Bryce Young has a ton to prove here. I mean, you talk about players in the league that need to prove themselves. I mean, this guy's got to be in the top 3 or 4 this year. Number 1 overall pick, incredibly lackluster rookie season. CJ Stroud's down in Houston taking these guys to the playoffs, and this team is 2-15. He looks undersized. He looks uncomfortable. He's notably quiet, which doesn't play particularly well in a locker room and a huddle. You need some personality to lead men, particularly professional football players who are such big dogs. I just don't like the psychology with Carolina really at all, but I don't like the psychology with the Saints either. So moral of the story, this game is pretty ass in all contexts. I think it's probably a 3-point push, but Guts, elaborate on this mediocrity.
Hey, you know what? I disagree with you on the coaching hire for the Panthers because I love Dave Canales. Now, is he a head coach? We'll have to see about that. But the one thing
That's my point. It's purely that, just the head coach. And I always think like old school head coaches like Parcells, John Madden, even guys we're going to talk about in a few minutes here, guys like Jim Harbaugh. Like, look at Jim Harbaugh versus Dave Canales. Dave Canales looks like he could be like your casino host in like a Caribbean casino.
Right.
And Jim Harbaugh is like the biggest hard-on guy that barely speaks to anybody because he loves football so much. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's really that.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Overall, if I'm going to hire a head coach, I want a defensive-minded head coach than an offensive-minded head coach. And Dave Canales is that offensive-minded head coach. But I can't argue the fact that everywhere he's gone as an OC, he's been very successful, and he's worked with some quarterbacks that were kind of washed up before they got them. We're talking about Baker Mayfield. We're talking about Geno Smith. I mean, he was the quarterback whisperer for both of those teams when he was the OC. And look what happened to them. They had this great year when he was under his wing, and then they got the biggest contracts ever, overvalued on both sides of the ball. But they were very successful, and he drove them to be playoff caliber quarterbacks. Now he gets to inherit Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young, to me, is a talent that people were really down on this quarterback last season. But you have to understand, this guy was running for his life. That offensive line was god awful. They were just blitzing the hell out of him because it's the easiest thing to do against Carolina. And the weapons were kind of just mismatched, washed up veterans. He comes in here, Dave Canales, and he spends a ton of money to build this offensive line. Did he overspend? Probably, but they're trying to protect their franchise quarterback. And I think they did a good job of that in the offseason. Adding key guys in the interior line that are veterans that can really hold up. So I think that offensive line is going to improve in a lot of cases. And then you look at New Orleans. New Orleans to me is going downward. So their stock value is dropping. They were a good team last year, contended to go to the playoffs, didn't make it. Tampa actually won the NFC South. But they got this new OC, Clint Kubiak. I'm not high on him as the OC there. I think this offense is going to really plummet. The defense should be okay because they're going to get a little bit healthier. But when they play divisional opponents, I'm not really high on them. And if you want some key trends on this one, when they play Carolina, New Orleans is 1-4 ATS versus them since 2021. So while this Carolina team, they were 2-15 last season, they were 0-9 straight up, 1-7-1 ATS on the road. So there's that trend dynamic as well. But I'm going to be high on Carolina when most people aren't. And that's kind of like the position I like on this one. I think they get over their win total, to be honest with you, as far as their season outcome is perceived. But I'm a little bit high. I want to see what Dan Canales can do as a head coach with Bryce Young. Does that offense improve? We shall see. I'm looking forward to this game. But, yeah, if I had to lean one direction, I'd say Carolina.
Yeah, I would lean Carolina as well. Again, I think it's just a battle of mediocrity. So probably better spots on the board. But if you guys are betting every game, office pool stuff, probably take the dog there. And
hey, you got to say this, though. with Carolina, mediocrity is better than ass. Okay, because they were ass last year.
True. 40 minutes in, 4 o'clock slate, 4 more games here, more officials. I have 2 officials in this particular slate. I'll throw it to the gun for the first one. Broncos at Seahawks. A lot of change in Denver. Bo Nix getting the starting job, I think, to the surprise of some. Obviously, the quarterback situation there has been dire for a period of time now. Seahawks with a coaching change as well. Very young coach out there, I believe, only 37 years old. A lot of moving parts, but the gun seems to have it figured out. Taking the home team, Seahawks -6.
Yeah, I think this is a good survivor pick, too. It's my favorite survivor pick of the week is to go take Seattle to beat Denver. And it's more predicated on the fact that we got a rookie quarterback here, folks. And Bo Nix is that guy. But look at these two teams when they come out of the season. 9-8, Seattle was -3 point differential, -49 net yard average on the year. On the Denver side of the ball, they were 5-12 for the season, -72 net yards, -3 point differential. So from those statistics, those teams are pretty similar as far as how much yardage they give, the point differential, and everything like that. However, Seattle just had a better record. When we look at Denver, it's just complete reset button. Get rid of Russell Wilson, putting in Bo Nix, getting rid of one of their better receivers and Jerry Jeudy, letting him go to Cleveland. And now they're just kind of rebuilding this team, molding it to what Sean Payton wants it to be. I know they're high on Bo Nix, and he's everything out there in articles and everything like that says he's ahead of the learning curve as far as a rookie quarterback is concerned. So we'll see if that actually shows in this game. But I'm not going to be high on Denver in this spot here. Denver is one of the worst teams as far as the defense goes, and they didn't even fire their defensive coordinator. They just kept Vance Joseph around. This was 30th in defensive DVOA last year, and they lost more than they gained on this one. And they can't afford people because they were so cash poor by that Russell Wilson signing and that investment. It's going to take them a year or two to actually get back to square one as far as the books are concerned. And this defense has a bunch of guys on the last year of their contracts. So who knows what that mentality does with that team. And I'm guaranteed they don't like Vance Joseph as the leader there. And with Seattle, they got some changes as well. Getting Mike Macdonald as the head coach, their defensive-minded head coach. Good move for them coming over there from Baltimore. New hire on the OC end, which I thought was interesting. University of Washington OC from last year. And if you remember, Washington was an electric offense in the NCAA last year. It took them to a run to the national championship game, which they lost to Michigan. Mike Macdonald also, like I said, defensive-minded guy. This team was 28th in defensive DVOA last season. They go and they just build that defensive front up, go get free agents, go draft Byron Murphy to help that pass rush. They got great linebackers, too, to help to kind of complement what Mike Macdonald's vision is of that defense. You remember that Baltimore defense was nasty last year. And I think he's able to give that Seattle defense it has the capability of building it back up to when they were the Legion of Boom back in the day when they were making those Super Bowl runs. We'll see if that happens. But Denver, just a bad road team. -11 point differential last season, -131 net yard average, 2-6 ATS on the road in those 8 spots in 2023. So you just have a Denver situation, which you have a lot of these fade elements in. You have a bad road team. You have a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix in this first game going to Seattle, of all places, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. And you're expecting a quarterback like Bo Nix to produce. Granted, I know he played at Oregon, so in-state type of element there, but I'm high on Seattle today. I think -6 is a good spot. So give me Seattle -6 as the play.
Yeah, I mean, the rookie quarterback on the road, particularly not Caleb Williams and these guys that were really expected to be the starters, it's going to be a hostile environment, no doubt. So we expect that to be potentially a blowout to start the season for Denver on the road. My first official in the 4 o'clock slate, switching hats. Somebody said I was brave to wear a Giants hat. Well, check this one out, ladies and gentlemen. 4:05, Jim Harbaugh returns. The buy hat is engaged. And I truly love this play. This might be my favorite. Actually, I love them all, but this is a really top look for me here. And when you really start to go through it, Jim Harbaugh re-entering the NFL arena. It's been far too long. This guy's an elite coach. He is where he belongs on an NFL sideline. and he really finds a great buy low. Guns was talking about Jacksonville. Well, I remind you, 2 years ago, the Chargers lost a 1-point playoff game in Jacksonville. So this is a playoff caliber team that really fell apart last year, going 5-12 after Justin Herbert got injured. But even when Justin Herbert was in the lineup, they were 5-7 straight up last year. But really going through that, they had 4 losses by 3 points, 1 in overtime, and 1 loss by 2. So 5 coin flip losses there. This is a buy low team. And this is where Harbaugh will juice up this group immensely and sustainably, unlike other rookie head coaches coming into the league this year. And I went back to the last time that Jim was an NFL head coach with the Niners. It was a very similar situation, actually. 2010 Niners were 6-10, which is very similar to what happened to the Chargers last year. Harbaugh comes in season 1, and they go 13-3. And it was Alex Smith before he transferred over to Colin Kaepernick. But Alex Smith at that point, if you guys remember, was a number 1 overall pick out of Utah, I believe in 2006 or 2005, something like that. So he was an elite level talent, underachieving with a previous regime in San Francisco. Harbaugh comes in immediately 13-3. And I think even more importantly, week 1 home game in the division that year, 33-17 blowout against Seattle. And you want to talk about Las Vegas. People are very high on Las Vegas, but I think you really have to go through the calendar last year to see what really happened after they moved on from Josh McDaniels and went to Antonio Pierce. I don't think anybody's lying when they say Antonio Pierce is a great leader of men, and the energy shifted significantly from Josh McDaniels, who's just a total mediocre NFL coach. But if you go through their wins last year, they went 8-9. Their wins were against Denver twice. Denver was terrible last year. Green Bay early season before Jordan Love figured it out. New England, who was terrible last year. The Giants, who were terrible last year. The Jets, who were terrible last year. And they beat the Chargers and Kansas City. And speaking of beating the Chargers, the last time these teams played, it was Thursday Night Football in the middle of December 14th, 2023. And for those of you guys who maybe are not remembering this off the top of your head, I'll remind you. 42-0 Las Vegas at the half. 63-21 win for the Raiders over the Chargers, who were starting Easton Stick that day. So you get a divisional revenge game, you get a new coach, you get a buy low on an incredibly talented team, and you get this great dynamic where Harbaugh all camp can chirp these guys. You gave up 63 points to these dudes last time we played. This is one of the biggest motivational spots on the board, a divisional rivalry game. I love this play. Chargers -3, 1 unit. Guns picks. Let's talk some other 4:00 games here.
Just real quick, I just want to bring this up because I was just looking in the chat. Football guy brought this up. It says Tyreek Hill got arrested. I'm seeing Adam Schefter did post that. He was detained by police entering the stadium for a driving violation. So I don't think it's anything to worry about on this one. They're just gonna, it's a non-story in my opinion.
Which is good because obviously he's had some potential domestic issues in the past. So good to hear there. But Guns, any comments on this one?
I'm sorry. I what was the game we were talking about? Oh, you mean the Chargers game? Chargers game, right? Yeah, I do actually. I was actually looking up some statistics on the trends on this one. So actually, when these teams meet, when you look at the Raiders and the Chargers, you take the home team. They've covered and won 6 straight, going back 3 years on that one. So if there's any take on this one, is probably the Chargers side on this one. I'm high on the Chargers all season long. I know a lot of people say like overinflated Jim Harbaugh going over there. He's a college coach, blah blah blah. He's gone and been a head coach, and you saw what he did with the 49ers. He made that immaculate run, took him to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick losing to the Baltimore Ravens back when Flacco was the quarterback there. But I think that this team overall, to me, is one of the teams that is my favorite to win the division. I think they go over their win total. I think in this game here, This team is well set up. Justin Herbert is a good quarterback, and a lot of people say, like, yeah, but he can't win in close games. It's like, is it him or is it the coach? At the end of the day, they have to make the play calling, and I think you got the right play caller there with Jim Harbaugh. His hires were very good as far as the defensive and offensive coordinators are concerned. They made the right moves as far as building the offense, building the offensive line, got to protect Herbert. He let some veterans go in the wide receiver corps. That's probably their weak spot this year, is trying to figure out who's the number one guy at wide receiver. But guys are going to have to step up into that role. They also Eckler not there anymore, so they got a lot of key weapons that they're going to have to figure out and see who's going to be the guy or not. But I like your take on this one. I think it's Chargers or pass for me.
Definitely. My next play, 4:25 p.m. We're going to Cleveland and taking the Browns. Posted midsummer on the money line at -108. It's $1.50 now. Take 2.5. I think there is potentially a 3-point or margin win coming here in some context. But really starting to go through it. This is a line that really stood out to me when I saw this midsummer. I said, okay, Cleveland's favored over Dallas. The lights went off. Why is Cleveland favored over Dallas? And I started to really go through it. Cleveland last year was actually pretty damn representative, going 11-6, making the playoffs with Joe Flacco as the quarterback. He was their fourth quarterback of the year at that point. Deshaun Watson got hurt midseason, but Deshaun Watson is a deceivingly young quarterback. It seems like this guy's been around forever. He's had off-the-field issues. The media has been all over him. He's switched teams. People are saying he forgot how to play, and he's terrible. He's still only 27 or 28 years old. This guy's a young quarterback. And I think he did start to find his flow with this group last year, pre-injury. 4-1 straight up and ATS last year. And I think even more importantly, 3-0 straight up and ATS at home last year with Watson. And really emphatic stuff. Week 1 blowout of Cincinnati, 24-3. Week 3 blowout of Tennessee, 27-3. And slightly later on, week 9, 27-0 against Arizona. Those 3 home games played by Deshaun Watson last year, plus 72 in the point differential. Average win by 24 points. And Cincinnati and Tennessee were playoff teams from the previous year. So these weren't all just joke games at home. And you really start to go through Dallas. Dallas has a lot of moving parts and turmoil throughout the offseason and in their locker room. CeeDee Lamb was out for most of camp. I don't know exactly how that's going to affect the group, but it has to stand for something when your best offensive player isn't in training camp. Dak Prescott is in the last year of his contract. You've seen how Jerry Jones handled the Lamb situation and previously the Ezekiel Elliott situation. We don't even know if Dak's going to be on this team next year. And if he has another season where they have a solid regular season and wash out of the playoffs, it's very possible they bring in a different solution for next year. So the point there is potentially a lame duck quarterback with this franchise, and Mike McCarthy might not come back next year either. Mike McCarthy continuing to showcase just how poor of a head coach he can possibly be. Loaded rosters year after year after year with Green Bay and Dallas, only one Super Bowl title, and constant washouts in the playoffs. And I think all those combined could lead to a splintered group. And opening up in the dog pound here, the new dog pound, this is an elite defense. Elite defense. I think the Browns are going to have them just completely on lockdown all afternoon. And you go back to Dallas last year, before a home blowout loss in the playoffs to Green Bay, 12-5 straight up in the regular season. But the key point, 9 wins versus non-playoff teams. That was largely fool's gold, those 12 wins. And they were, most importantly here, 0-4 ATS and straight up on the road at playoff teams. Blowout loss at San Francisco, 5-point divisional loss at Philly, blowout loss at Buffalo, and a loss at Miami. This is where Cleveland will turn up. As I said, their defense is elite. Dallas is in shambles to a degree, and the moving parts are very real. It's not where Dallas performs well. Lay down the hammer, Cleveland, on the money line, and -2.5 now at 425. Final game in the 4 o'clock slate. Point of conversation, 425, Washington, the debut of Jaden Daniels at Tampa Bay. Guns picks. Any comments?
Yeah, I was gonna add to your point on the Dallas take. You gotta understand Dallas is a falling knife in that division, the NFC East. If there's a team that's gonna drop on that one, it's gonna be them. Because I think Washington improved their roster and their coaching. Same thing with the Giants, and of course, you see what Philly's done already. I think that those three teams alone have improved. When you look at Dallas, Dallas lost more people, and it's going to be very interesting to see on that blind side where Dax is at. Tyron Smith is not there anymore. He went to the Jets. So I think I want to see how that offensive line kind of works with Dax running for his life. But talking about this Washington game, I mean, I'm going to be high on Washington all season long because I just think they made the right moves. Of course, they stole Dan Quinn from Dallas. Speaking of Dallas on this one, 4-13 season last season. And they got a new OC who is former Arizona head coach that spent a year over at USC. Offensive-minded guy, Cliff Kingsbury, is going to be running that offense. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Jaden Daniels does in his type of offense, because I think what his offense is kind of complemented to what Jaden Daniels is comfortable and used to. So I think the turnover or his progression is going to come rapidly versus, progression over time. They also beef up their offensive line. So picking up vets like and also pick up some key weapons, veteran guys like Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner at linebacker, Frankie Lavu. Those guys are like exceptional all-pro type players. They are on the older side, however, but I think that's going to kind of help that the youth that's with that team with the complement of all these key veterans, similar to what the Bears are doing, is going to really work out for their whole total season. And then you just look at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is another falling knife. Speaking of falling knives, 9-8 season, but they lost their quarterback whisperer, Dave Canales. He's over on in the division with the Panthers now running that team. We talked about his element previously. They also lost Shaq Barrett. They lost Devin White. These are key veterans on that defense. So the thing that was keeping them in a lot of games was two key components. Dave Canales, that was running that offense, and Baker Mayfield was just exceptional when he was the OC there with the play calling. And that defense, when they were just not producing. With depth, and you lose the key guys off that roster, the guys that are the leaders of that defense. I'm not going to be high on this Tampa team. I think they're a falling knife. Also, you want to look at some key trends on this one. Washington 5-1 ATS versus non-divisional opponents in 2023, 6-2 ATS is away dog. I mean, I'm leaning towards the Washington side on this one, and you're getting it above a 3. Yeah, I'd take Washington plus 3.5 all day long.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think Washington has a huge buy element. I think Ron Rivera was far past his window there with Washington. So getting a new voice in the room, Dan Quinn. And for those of you guys who remember, Dan Quinn had a nice early run with the Falcons. And I think it's important. It's what we said about Sean McDermott. You get down the road a little bit. Maybe your voice is stale. But some of these guys, they at least have a jolt and they have potential Super Bowl run in them. I mean, the Falcons... Guns is wearing the jersey 28-3. We'll never forget that one. But this guy is a Super Bowl caliber coach. There's no way around it. He's obviously got a great defensive pedigree, and I think he's going to uplift that defense, which was a sieve situationally last couple years. And I think the speculation and the conversation about Jaden Daniels has been incredibly positive. Of course, he's a bit of an older rookie. I think he is 23. Obviously, having moved from Arizona State over to LSU, but I think he's going to perform. And I think the Bucs just are. It's really the story of that division in general. It's just a mediocre division, the NFC South. Obviously, the Falcons have some upside with Kirk Cousins and a new roster parts there, but this is one of the weaker divisions in the sport. So the fact that Tampa Bay won the division last year, it doesn't really tell us anything versus the rest of the league. So I think the Commanders are a buy team. I like the coach. I like the quarterback. And I don't like the Bucs. So I agree. And I think that's also why you're seeing some steam on Washington, at least throughout the summer. I think at least one or 2 points during the summer. There was some movement towards Washington. Of course, late movement in the next 2 hours is totally arbitrary. We've been tracking this most of the summer. So not entirely sure who's betting it right now, but I think people have been on Washington throughout the summer. So I think a lot of these small dogs do have some access. And I think that just letting the lines tell you the story in a lot of these games. Bucks only laying 3.5 to Washington. Saints only laying 3.5 to the Panthers, who were 2-15. Bills only laying 6.5 to Arizona. I think there's a lot of live dogs today, and I think you're going to see a lot of scrappy teams compete against these numbers at the dog spot. Last game, 8:20 p.m., rematch of the playoffs. Stafford back in Detroit again for one of the biggest upstart teams in the entire league. The Detroit Lions off an NFC championship run last year, losing at San Francisco. But as I mentioned, rematch of the wild card playoffs, a tight Detroit victory, 24-23. Our guy Razor Sharp Picks in the chat says top bet for him, Lions Rams under 52.5. That game in the playoffs was an under versus this number, 24-23. I think this game is going to be really tough to cap from an ATS perspective. The line is almost identical to the playoff line, which was right around 3 as well, and it was a 1-point game. So I think what books are telling you there is they expect another game right around a field goal. I would like to have something in this game. I couldn't find much, though, because, again, I do think this is a really tightly graded game. Guns, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I think, I guess you can use the mentality of a revenge spot, right, for the Rams. Like you said, losing 24-23 in the NFC wild card. So maybe there's a little bit of an edge there for the dog, but I think I agree with Razor Sharp. It's like I don't think we should play with the spread on this one. We should probably look at the total. And I think it's going to be another one of those first game out the gate. I think the perception or the expectations for when you see a team like Detroit, an electric powered offense, LA Rams, kind of with Matt Stafford running that, always had that electric offense. But I think it's a little bit misleading because the Rams really are very good at keeping the time of possession on their side of the ball. They run a very slow, methodical. They're not trying to rush. They get to the line. They set things up methodically. And they do score points, but it takes them forever to score those points. So I'd rather not play with the side on this one, but I may have an official on the total when we get towards game time. So yeah, I'm with Razor on this one. I think this is an under a pass.
Yeah, as I said, this is a tough game for me, and I would have liked to find something here, but it is tough. And it just off the top of my head, I'm recalling that the Lions have been excellent in the first half at home in the last 2 seasons, at least, as they've gained this upward movement. I think the first half could be a look for sure. I can see the Rams catching some win in the second half. So if I had a free play here, if I was going to bet this game, I'd probably lean towards the Lions in the first half. Monday Night Football tomorrow night, September 9th, it will be big-time football. Second consecutive year, the Jets have opened in prime time. They hope that this year the story is different, as, of course, Aaron Rodgers did not make it through the first quarter of that game last year at home. This one on the road in San Francisco. Marquee matchup, if we're being honest. I think this game has a ton of intrigue. I have a Super Bowl ticket in my portfolio for the Niners at plus 600. I think this team will win the Super Bowl this year. I think that they've been on the cusp for the last 4 years. They're really in the beginning, or not necessarily the beginning, but they're right where they want to be. And they're just so due, for lack of a better word, to win one of these tight Super Bowls. And as I mentioned, I think the Chiefs are probably capped. It's hard to three-peat. So I have a Niners Super Bowl ticket, but the game tomorrow I think is very difficult. Jets and Niners really don't have much matchup data. Of course, they've never played with Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback. It's out of division, out of conference, out of time zone. Guys, what do you think about this one?
Well, as long as we can get Aaron Rodgers through 1 or 2 possessions, this could be an interesting type of game. His health as a 40-plus-year-old quarterback is questionable. We're not looking at Tom Brady here. We're looking at Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, this is kind of a tough one here. I as far as the 49ers are concerned, I think some of the stuff in the offseason that was really hurting them is, Trent Williams holding out, got his contract. So that's a key point on that one because Trent Williams, if he's not in that lineup, that team is different. Same thing with CMC. CMC and that guy working hand in hand, running that Shanahan type of offense with those screen passes and just have that big bastard running down the field, just taking out lanes of people is what that team needs to be successful. Of course, they have the dynamic wide receiver core with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel with the team. Granted, Ayuk is a little bit disgruntled, wanting a contract, but I think with this team, I actually this matchup here, just a marquee matchup here on the Monday Night Football. It's going to be beautiful to watch. I don't have any plays on this one, but I'm just looking at the line movement on this one. Opened at 46, we're seeing 43s and a half hit the board. There's going to be a buy, I think, at some point to go try to nab the over, because I think this could be a good high scoring game. I haven't officially played anything on this one. I'm probably going to research this sometime Sunday just to figure out if there's some sort of look. But it's going to be a good matchup there Monday. I mean, we got Aaron Rodgers going up against the 49ers. Tails hold this time.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a tough game. The total seems a little low at 43.5. I think maybe they're looking for a defensive battle here. Again, we haven't really seen Rodgers on record with this team much, so we don't really know what to make of the game. Just a clarification, Brandon Ayuk did just sign a 4-year contract 5 days ago.
Okay, so I missed that because I knew they tagged him or something, but I didn't know they got him that contract that he needed. So that's better for the 49ers. Better for the 49ers.
Yeah, so he's disgruntled no more, if we're being honest there. But nonetheless, that will be a game to look at tomorrow. Tough game. So wrapping it up here, over an hour in the books. Our guy Anthony Latino, the odds fellow, will be joining us mid-season, I believe. We're going to be hopefully bringing on. Oh, he's coming in next week.
Yep.
Okay, he'll be back next week. The three-way will resume next week. We'd love to bring you guys the content, the top picks, the analysis, and the hype. It is the Shark and a Gun. 3 top plays for me: New York Giants, Pick'em, Chargers -3, and Browns on the money line. Guns with Jacksonville Jaguars on the road +3.5, Atlanta at home -3.5, and Seattle -6. 6 top plays, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. This is the most competitive marketplace, NFL content. We love to bring it to you guys. We get up early. We try to hype it up. We appreciate you guys in the chat. We're going to try to build the chat up even more with your plays, your analysis, feature some people throughout the season. I'm feeling good vibes today, Guns. I think we've been very selective with these plays. I think our top plays are highly vetted, and I think we are immensely due for upward movement, having lost a handful of coin flips over the last week or two in college football. So it's a pleasure as always. We appreciate you guys immensely. Have a great day. Cash all your tickets. Let's dominate this one. Guns picks. Close them out with some words, and let's go.
Yeah, chat was beautiful today. I appreciate everybody getting into the chat. I love putting your stuff up. I love talking and engaging with you guys. That's why we have the best chat in the world. And of course, over 500 of you beautiful bastards watch us live. Please like and subscribe to both of our channels, actually the Guns Pick channel and Sharky Waters Nation. We get the hottest content on the planet all the way through football season. It's going to be a very fun time, and I appreciate everybody joining us here on the Extra Points NFL show. Let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the board. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang.